Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Super Talk 99.7 WGN and AFP Foundation's Tennessee Congressional District Republican Primary District 7 debate. Yes, give us a round of applause. We appreciate you being here live and capturing a beautiful facility brought to us by Ray Stevens, and we thank this facility for hosting our debate tonight. We also thank each of our individuals in the listening audience in the House and listening on Super Talk 99.7 WGN. My name is Matt Murphy, and the afternoon host of Super Talk 99.7 WGN, Monday through Friday from 3 until 7. I've had the pleasure and honor of speaking to each of these individuals on our stage that we'll introduce to you presently, individually, and now it's a pleasure to have them on stage together. I'm also pleased to be joined by Michael Lotfi with the Americans for Prosperity Foundation. Michael?
Matt, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm Michael Lotfi with Americans for Prosperity Foundation. We're very privileged to have all these candidates joining us this evening. I'm going to kick it back to Matt, and we're going to get started here.
All right, so we're going to give the details of the debate. We'll introduce the debate candidates after we honor our country with a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. It's my pleasure to introduce Representative Aaron Mayberry, and he's going to join us. We ask to stand if you are able. We will offer a prayer. Aaron?
All right. Thank you. Let's join me in prayer today. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight with grateful hearts, acknowledging that you are the author of liberty and the giver of every good gift. We thank you for the privilege of living in this great nation and the blessing of calling Tennessee our home. Lord, we lift up every candidate on this stage. Your word says, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all. Tonight, we ask for the wisdom that comes from above, that wisdom that is pure, peace, loving, gentle, and full of mercy, and let truth and integrity guide their words. We pray for our voters, that you would give them discernment to choose our next congressman, one that would act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly, who will stand boldly for righteousness, knowing that righteousness exalts a nation. And Father, tonight we commit this evening and this race into your hands, remembering that there is no authority except from you, and that those that exist have been instituted by you. We trust that you will raise up leaders in your timing and for your purposes. And we pray these things in your powerful and matchless name, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Mayberry. He's also a pastor, by the way, as obvious. I'm going to introduce my good friend, Dr. Ken Berry. He's going to do the pledge for us. So, Dr. Ken, there he is.
Thank you, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand with me and give the proper salute, and let's pledge allegiance to our big, beautiful flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right.
And how we anticipate the debate will go tonight. The candidates qualified through two different ways. One was through a poll commissioned by Americans for Prosperity, and the other was to demonstrate money totaling $250,000 within their political campaigns for use during the rest of the campaign to the primary on October 7th. The candidates that qualified under the debate rules are as follows, and I'm going to introduce them, and feel free if you're in the listening audience, this is your opportunity to shout it out for your guy. Jody Barrett is first up. Jody, congratulations. Representative Gino Bolso is second. Gino. Representative Lee Reeves. And Matt Van Epps down at the end. So congratulations, gentlemen. The debate rules are very simple, and one of the reasons I so appreciate Americans for Prosperity is the simplicity of the rules. There will be a candidate opening and closing remark. Each candidate will be permitted 1 minute for opening and 1 minute for closing remarks. That will total 2 minutes per candidate. The candidates will be addressed by either myself or Michael Lotfy in random order. We're going to use like a chat GPT randomizer to randomize the order of the responses. So if you are frustrated that you're always going third, blame chat GPT. Don't blame Matt Murphy or Michael Lotfy. All right, we're keeping stop time, and I know Michael's going to tell you a little about that. But during questioning, candidates will have 90 seconds each to respond in your fashion. You don't necessarily have to take the 90 seconds, but those 90 seconds are yours. Every candidate will answer the same question, and candidates will not be provided questions ahead of time, obviously. You see the lovely Pamela Furr down at the base of the stage. Pamela will start time when you start speaking, not when I'm speaking, obviously, but when you start speaking, and then she will give you a 30-second marker, and then she will give you stoppage of time. After 5 seconds overage, I will say verbally, stop, and if you continue to speak after that, you will be deducted 1 minute of answer time during the next question and answer period. So we're just trying to be respectful of the time and respectful of the other candidates. So that's how we're working that.
All right.
Michael.
So the other thing that's really important in this debate is the role of the moderators, Matt and myself. So the role of the moderators will be as follows. I don't know about you guys, but I get really frustrated when I watch a debate and the moderators think it's their job to debate the candidates. So that's why we have these rules the way they are, to protect the candidates and to protect you all as well, because we think you deserve better than that. So the role of the moderators are: 1, ensure the debate rules are followed. Number 2, enforce consequences for not following the rules. Number 3, read the questions and provide clarity to you all if you're not sure what the question was or didn't understand it, if you need a definition, feel free to ask. And then to maintain the schedule. Here's what we are not allowed to do as the moderators. We are not allowed to fact check you all in any way, shape, or form. We are not allowed to signal our approval or our disapproval of your answers in any way, shape, or form either. So another rule for you all is crosstalk and name checking. Essentially, what we don't want to have happen is, to respect everyone's time, is we do not want you all talking to each other, mentioning each other's names in your responses, or singling an individual out. Because what that leads to is the other individual wants to respond, and then they don't they don't feel like they've had enough time to respond or whatever. So we're not going to do that in this debate. And let's see, finally, now you are free to say something along the lines of, unlike my opponents, that's okay, but not my opponent, and then look at someone or something along the lines of that. If this rule is violated in any way, shape, or form, you will be deducted time from your next response. I do also want to be clear, don't try to be cute and do it on your last question, because that time will then come off of your closing statement, okay? Let's see, on stage, which you guys, I think everyone can see here. Thank you for we sent this rule to them ahead of time, so everyone abided by it. Thank you very much. No campaign garb is allowed. No phones are allowed. All you're allowed is the pen and pad that they all have and the bottle of water that they all have. So those are the rules of the debate. And then we will go ahead and start in random order with our opening remarks. As we said earlier, Pamela Furr is going to start keeping time. She will hit start as soon as I finish saying your name in this instance. So per Grok, per Grok, and we will re-randomize this every single time, by the way.
Elons, I like that. Elon. That's good.
Right.
Yeah.
We're Elon folk. So first we have Mr. Matt Van Epps. Go ahead with your opening statement,
Awesome.
sir.
Thank you all so much. Honored to be here. Matt Van Epps. I'm a Christian, a husband, a father, a conservative, and a combat veteran. I'm a graduate of West Point, part of the class of 9/11. I went on to fly Apache attack helicopters and deployed to Iraq for 12 months. After that, I assessed and was selected for the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment just up the road at Fort Campbell, deploying 8 times to combat in Afghanistan to take the fight to terrorist high-value targets. So why am I running? I'm running because duty, honor, and country is core to who I am. I'm running because I have a young daughter and I want what's best for her generation. I'm running because I want to fight for all of you alongside President Trump and Speaker Johnson. I've been honored to be endorsed by Mark Green and will fight really hard for our district. For more information, mattfortn.com. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Epps. Next we have Representative Lee.
Thank you very much. I'm Lee Reeves.
Lee Reeves, I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry, it threw me off a second. I'm Lee Reeves. I am a Christian. I'm a husband to my wife, Claire, for the last 22 years. And I'm the proud father of 3 children that mean the world to me. I'm also a recovering lawyer and a state representative from Williamson County. I am the American First Trump supporting candidate in this race, and I want to go to Washington, D.C. and to work on the things that this district cares about. It's immigration, it's defunding our sanctuary cities, it's passing a birthright citizenship bill to eliminate that loophole, and it's to get our budget under control at the federal level, because we have to do that, and we have to do it right now. I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. to be President Trump's teammate and help him get his agenda across the finish line, because we've got a very short amount of time to get that done before the midterm elections. I'm Lee Reeves. You can go to leereeves.com to find out more. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Reeves. Next, we have Representative Jody Barrett.
Thank you very much. My name is Jody Barrett. I am from Dixon, Tennessee, currently a state representative for the 69th House District, representing Dixon County, Hickman County, and Lewis County. I'm married to my lovely wife, Holly, who's in the audience tonight, and if we make it to December, it will be 29 years together. We have 3 children that we've homeschooled, all 3 of them, two daughters and a young son. I'm running in this race to offer the people of the 7th District a conservative option as a candidate. I'm the most conservative candidate in the race. I'm the only one that has 2 different agencies that have given me a perfect 100% conservative voting record. And the difference between being 100% and something less than that, that's where the fight is. If it's 80% conservative or 100%, that 20%, that's where the fight is with leadership or the big PACs. So thank you very much.
All right, very good, gentlemen. Question number 1 comes from me, Matt. Oh, sorry, Gino. My apologies. Gino Bolso, I am so sorry. I apologize. Representative Bolso, my apologies.
Friends, we gather today on September the 5th. On this same date, September the 5th, in 1774, our founders convened the First Continental Congress. George Washington was there. John Adams was there. Patrick Henry was there. Samuel Adams was there. That Congress united the colonies against intolerable acts and British tyranny. Today we face a challenge of a different sort. Our freedom and our liberty is not threatened by a tyrant an ocean away. Rather, it is threatened by our own federal government, a government that is too big, that taxes too much, that spends too much, and that has plunged our country into $37.2 trillion in debt. It is time for us, ladies and gentlemen, to unite behind President Trump to give the people the type of limited federal government that our founders intended. Thank you.
All right, with that, we start questions. And question number 1 comes from yours truly. And my randomizer here says the first respondent will be Representative Lee Reeves. The question is simply, what is, in your belief, the role of the federal government?
Well, I appreciate the question. So the role of the federal government in a federalist system is to make decisions for the entire country that the states cannot make for themselves. And that's why we have a 10th Amendment. And I believe in that. And so we have to limit some of the overreach that we've had in the last 100 years, actually more. But it's really accelerated in the last 100 years. And that's something that we've got to get under control, both from a spending perspective, but also just intruding in the lives of everyday Americans. And when I get to Washington, D.C., that is how I will view everything in front of me. We have rescission bills that are coming, and so whoever is elected to this position may need to vote on giving money back to the U.S. Treasury. That's incredibly important, and it limits the scope and size of government. I also support getting rid of the Department of Education, and that's going to be a fight that we're going to have. And I appreciate that. We've got to pull back from this overreach, and when I go to Washington, D.C., that will be part of the fight that I'm willing and happy to take on.
Same question for Representative Jody Barrett. What do you believe is the role of the federal government?
Well, you only have to look to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. The role of the federal government is to defend and protect our individual constitutionally protected rights and provide for the common defense. That's really it. You look to the Declaration of Independence and what the reason we founded this country, to provide each individual the opportunity to pursue happiness in a country where your individual God-given rights are respected, honored, protected, and defended by the government that we form of the people and by the people. And so the federal government is supposed to take the orders from us, not the other way around. Orders are not supposed to come from on high and be delivered down through your representative to tell you how you should think, how you should operate, how you should live, whether or not your business can stay open, whether or not you have to take a shot or not, whether or not your ability to worship should be limited by a government. It's supposed to be the opposite way. You all are the bosses of this country. That's the way this country was formed. That's the role of the federal government, to take orders from you. That's my job as your representative, to say what you would say and do what you would do if you were sitting in the chair and vote the way that you would vote. And if you send me to Washington, D.C., that's exactly what I will do for you. Thank you.
Gino Bolso, what do you believe is the role of the federal government?
Matt, that's a question that I wish more of our elected officials in Washington would ask, because the answer is very clear. The role of the executive branch is set out in Article 1 of our Constitution. The role of the legislative branch is set out in Article 2, and that of the judicial branch is set out in Article 3. Our entire country ratified our Constitution on September 17 of 1787. Matt, let me focus on Article 2 because that's the position that we're all running for. You know, Article 2 sets out 17 enumerated powers that Congress has. And part of the problem that we've gotten into over the years is that our elected officials have simply disregarded the limitations set out in Article 2 of our own Constitution. Let me go ahead and just take one as an example. You look at Article 1, Section 8, excuse me, Article 1, Clause 8, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, and it provides that the U.S. government can only spend money on three things: the debt, the deficit, and what's called the general welfare. We have gone well beyond that, unfortunately, with our federal government. General welfare was a defined term back in the 18th century. And unfortunately, folks have not heeded James Madison's view of what the general welfare meant. It simply meant that the federal government was authorized to spend money on those items set out in the 17 enumerated powers in Article 1.
And finally, Matt Van Epps, what do you consider the role of the federal government to be?
So the role of the federal government is to provide for the common defense, to ensure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to execute the power not reserved to the states. As a limited government person, I think we need to get more power out of Washington and back here, back home, back to local governments where decision makers know what's best. And that's what we're going to fight for. At 18 years old at the plane at West Point, I rose my hand for the first time and swore to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I take that oath very seriously. I've been wearing the uniform for 20 years. I'm still serving in the Tennessee Army National Guard now. And so how are we going to do this? We're going to do it through security, opportunity, and prosperity. On security, we're going to ensure we have a secure border. We're going to keep the work that Chairman Mark Green, that Secretary Noem, and the President has done to keep our border secure. We're going to work to provide resourcing to law enforcement. Those are some of the first folks that we met with in the campaign, sheriffs and chiefs, to ask them what do they need to protect us and our families. On opportunity, we're going to ensure that kids have an opportunity, that they have school choice, that power's returned to the parents. That's so important. For prosperity, we're going to have low taxes. We're going to fight to keep taxes low, to return onshoring of American manufacturing, to keep our communities strong, our small businesses strong, and our farms strong. And we'll be fighting every day to make that a reality.
Thank you all. All right, next question. Everyone on this stage has made a point in some form or fashion of calling themselves the America First Trump candidate. It goes without saying that all of you support President Trump's agenda. I think we're all aware of that. Please tell the audience and those listening at home on Supertalk 99.7 WTN an issue or policy where you actually have a differing opinion than President Trump. And for the purpose of this question, please do not respond with, I agree with President Trump on everything. First candidate to respond will be Mr. Matt Van Ups.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So, I think first, as an Army guy, I'd like him to spend more time at West Point than Annapolis. So we might disagree with that. But as an America First conservative, I am aligned with the president, and I believe where does that come from? I mean, I think the duty on our country piece, the fighting to support the agenda. I would have voted for the big beautiful bill. I think locking in the president's tax cuts were so incredibly important, and unleashing American energy, getting rid of the Green New Deal was so incredibly important. And I think an area we need to continue to dive into is spending control. We have our national debt is a national security issue, and that's a real challenge. China owns 10% of our foreign debt, second behind Japan. And that's an issue. So we have to continue to work to get rescissions packages done, to get to a balanced budget. And I think that is incredibly important, something that we'll fight really hard to do. In addition to fighting for the district, it's fighting to ensure that we have the resources needed for our families in the future. I don't want to kick the can down the road to my daughter and her generation. And that's what we intend to do, to put strong teams together that will execute on that mission.
Next, Representative Gino Bolso, please tell us a policy where you actually have a differing opinion than President Trump.
Michael, it's not so much a difference in policy. President Trump spends a lot of time on the golf course, and I prefer to spend time on the tennis court. The fact of the matter is that despite the instructions that you want us not to say we agree with President Trump on everything, I'm going to do that because I think President Trump is a generational leader unlike we've ever seen before. Until this term from President Trump, I had always believed that Ronald Reagan was the greatest Republican president of the last 100 years. I think it's now clear that it is President Trump who is the great American Republican president of the last 100 years. And you have to look no further than what he is just doing in the last 4 weeks. Look at what he did to remove nuclear weapons from Iran, sending B-2 bombers in a stealth invasion that had enormous success. Look at what he is doing now by exercising his authority under the Insurrection Act of 1807 in cleaning up some of our most dangerous cities, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and possibly Memphis, Tennessee. Because folks have a right when they go out in public to move without fear and to be able to be secure that when they and their children go out to dinner or go out for an evening, that they don't have to run the risk of being shot or have other criminal conduct occurring. So I don't disagree with President Trump on anything.
Representative Lee Reeves, please give us an example of where you disagree with one of President Trump's policies, at least one.
Well, I'll say this. President Trump is known for his hair. I am also, and so there's a difference right there. Look, President Trump right now is our quarterback. And we have to move his agenda down that field. It's a game of feet and inches. And I'm going to fight and scrap and take the handoff and run that ball if required. In order to do that, we need somebody up in Washington, D.C. who is not going to lay down in the middle of the road to stop traffic. We need someone who's going to fight and scrap to get his agenda across. He has done such wonderful things with the One Big Beautiful Bill, and he was smart to do it before the July 4th holiday. I don't know what's going to happen in the midterm elections. Nobody does. We know it generally cuts against the party in power. But because he got that done, and all the things in that bill can be felt by the American people before midterms, I am hopeful we will gain seats, but we're not sure about that. I am the only candidate on this stage that has supported fully President Trump since 2016. And I will continue to do so in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Finally, we have Representative Jody Barrett. Please tell us, sir, a issue or policy where you disagree with President Trump.
Well, I'll actually answer the question. I do have a couple of issues that I think I do differ with the president, at least from a Monday morning quarterback standpoint, where you look back in time and decisions that were made by the president. I think it's impossible to go around the 7th District or anywhere in Tennessee, really anywhere in the United States, and find many folks who now think that Operation Warp Speed was a real success. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback and look back now upon facts and things that we know about COVID and about the vaccines. But anytime the government is stepping in on top of your individual rights and executing policies that are putting all of us in danger. We have millions of Americans now who are vaccine injured, dealing with the results of this vaccine mandate. We have family members that died alone in a hospital or a nursing home where we were having to look through windows to watch them die. That is not a success and not something that I think the president should be proud of. And I think others have told him that, and I think that's why we've probably seen him talk less about that in a glowing fashion.
All right, gentlemen, the next question will first go to Representative Barrett. President Donald Trump recently announced the United States government took over approximately a 10% stake in the Intel company, the Intel Corporation, chip manufacturing. Many conservative Republicans have framed this as government seizing the means of production. Socialism is defined as a political or economic system by which the government of any given system seizes the means of production. Should the federal government be taking ownership within private companies, yes or no? And if no, explain how we could promote chip manufacturing in the United States of America without the United States government taking over partial ownership of this company. Jody?
Well, the answer is no. The government should not own private companies. They should not own interest in private companies. They shouldn't own interest in privately owned and operated banks. That's just counterintuitive to the American system and the way our country is supposed to work. How do you incentivize those companies to come here? You do that the same way that you incentivize any industry to do well in this country. You cut red tape. You cut regulation. You offer incentives where necessary. You work with state governments that have opportunities within their state boundaries that can provide opportunities for these companies to come here. That is the way we do business in America. We promote private enterprise, and we want capitalism to work, not the government coming in and picking winners and losers.
Gino Bolso, and I can repeat the question if anybody needs, but Gino.
Yeah. Matt, the question, the answer to the question is no. And the answer is found in the Constitution, because we are a country that has defined powers of our federal government. Look at Article 1, which governs the legislative branch. There's nothing in those 17 enumerated powers in Article 1 that would give Congress the ability to have tax dollars used to buy an interest in a private corporation. Look at Article 2, which governs the executive branch, President Trump's article. There's nothing in Article 2 of our federal Constitution that would give the chief executive of our country the ability to take tax dollars and invest them in a private company. So without there being a basis in the Constitution for our tax dollars to be used to purchase an interest in a private company, it simply should not be done. And I'll point out that our earliest presidents understood that. Just to take Thomas Jefferson as an example in dealing with recent events, I mean, in 1807, he actually went to Congress to give him the authority to use the U.S. military to repulse any type of rebellion, which is how we got to the Insurrection Act of 1807. So our federal government is a government of limited powers. There is no power set out in the Constitution allowing the U.S. government to purchase an interest in a private company.
Next up, Representative Lee Reeves.
Well, thank you. To be clear, when I heard this story, I thought, oh, something's worth looking into here. Unfortunately, I haven't had enough time to fully do that. But I would look a little further into this. I understand that they have not purchased a stake, but there is some stake at some point. But it shouldn't be long term. I agree with that for sure. But what it does raise as a question is, what is our economic national security? And we have absolutely an interest in making sure that semiconductors, that chips are made in the United States, because we know that for decades, China has been making chips for us, and it is in all of our products. I was talking to an expert in this the other day, and he said, China has the ability to listen to what's going on in the room through your robo vacuum cleaner, that they can shut off parts of your home now because of those chips. We have an interest, a national security interest, in making sure that we shut off China's ability to do that, and making sure that we have the domestic capability of making those chips is of enormous importance. And when I get up to Washington, I will help the president in finding the right way to do that. Thank you.
Matt Van Epps.
So the president is leading an innovation. He is an innovative problem solver. And you look at the clear red line he drew with Iran, and when they didn't negotiate, he launched a strike to crush their nuclear capabilities. When you look at tariffs, when you look at fighting against men and women's sports, he takes a common sense approach and is a boots on the ground leader. And in this case, we have got to do this because chip manufacturing is a strategic imperative to counter China. The PRC is the number one global threat to the United States. When you look in the Pacific, Chinese aircraft carriers are now sailing around Australia, doing 1,000 carrier takeoffs and landings, doing live fire exercises. They risk stability in the region. That's an economic issue. That has a direct threat against chip manufacturing. We have to export American technology to set the global standard for what AI can do. Just this past week, the president had AI and tech leaders at the White House and convened a meeting so that they could talk about how we can continue to lead in AI and technology. The president is leading there because he knows that we have to set the global standard, and we have got to counter China. And I support the president in those efforts.
Thank you all. Question number 4. Congressional Republicans just recently passed the Big Beautiful Bill. Thank you all for being at the Big Beautiful debate. They sent that bill to President Trump's desk. He signed it. It's now the law of the land. Was there anything in the bill, or actually I should say, please tell me something in the bill that you that you disagreed with, that thought shouldn't be in that bill, or perhaps something you would have fought to change in the bill? First, please answer the question, Representative Gino Bolso.
Michael, what was in that bill that I wish had not been there was raising the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. Because we are already passing on to our children and grandchildren a deficit that exceeds any number that anyone on either side of the aisle could find to be reasonable. We're spending $1 trillion a year now in interest servicing that debt, which is more than we spend on any federal program other than Social Security, on which we spend approximately $1.3 trillion. We spend more on interest now than we do on Medicare, on Medicaid, or even on the entire Department of Defense, which has a budget annually of approximately $850 billion. There were many wonderful things in that big, beautiful bill. Obviously, making permanent the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017 was essential. Defunding Planned Parenthood at long last was a beautiful thing. Obviously, defunding NPR and defunding PBS was excellent as well. But if I could change one thing, it would have been increasing the debt ceiling by $4 trillion.
Thank you, sir. Next, we've got Mr. Matt Van Epps.
So I mentioned this before, but I would have voted for the big, beautiful bill. I think locking in the largest tax cuts in American history was so incredibly important, and the getting rid of the Green New Deal was also really important. I am pro-oil and natural gas and pro-nuclear. Tennessee's leading in nuclear technology, and that's really exciting. The first small modular reactor is going to go at the Clinch River site in East Tennessee. That's going to have real impacts across our state and across our district. Continuing to invest in nuclear technology is so important. That is also a national security imperative. When we look at the deficit that we have in energy and power, especially as more AI and technology comes on board, it's huge, and we've got to continue to do that. I also think that investing in nuclear technology and fuels is good for our small businesses. It's good for our families and our farmers. It reduces the cost at the pump. It reduces the cost of fuel and fertilizer. And that's what we have to do. We've got to continue to fight for our small businesses. We've got to continue to fight to make farms profitable across our district. And I stand ready to do that. I also agree with the president that they're taking a proactive approach to the rescissions packages, to clawing back unnecessary spending, and that's incredibly important. We'll continue to keep the budget and reducing our deficit at the top of the list. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Jody Barrett.
So, unfortunately, my friend Gino got the first crack at this, because that is the answer to the question, is the increase in spending and the increase in the debt ceiling. It's something that we've seen now for many years. We've been operating outside of normal order for probably 30 years since the last time we actually passed a budget, certainly since we've balanced the budget. And the deficit that we deal with today has skyrocketed, and it's a multi-pronged problem. And we're not going to grow our way out of it, and we're not going to be able to cut our spending enough to get out of it. It's going to take many, many things on both ends of that spectrum and changes in the way that we do business. The one thing about the big, beautiful bill that I think we saw as the Freedom Caucus members objected to the passage with what came back from the Senate, they had sent several items of additional cost-cutting measures that they wanted in the bill that the Senate sent back with those items removed. And they were prepared to vote no against it. But when they went and met with the president, what I think happened is they were given the big picture of here's what's going to happen in step 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is just step 1. And that's what allowed them to get on board for this temporary increase in spending. I'm hopeful that we see many more efforts along the way to reduce that.
Thank you, sir. Representative Reeves, what would you have changed about the big, beautiful bill?
Yeah, it's been said before, but the regretful part is that we actually had to get the debt ceiling higher. I think we all regret that for sure. But we do know that we have to grow our way out as well as cut wasteful spending and get out of the things that the federal government should not be in. We know that both of those things are true. The one big beautiful bill, and by the way, I love the name because the press corps has to refer to it as the big beautiful bill, which I love it every time I see it in print. It did a lot of things that were incredibly important and had to be done. And, you know, it's always a negotiation, and President Trump is a negotiator, so we don't always prefer it the way that it comes out. We want it the way we want it. But it gave $50 billion to rural health care across the United States. It provided funding to complete the wall, which is incredibly important. Thank you. It provided additional funding to ICE so that they could hire additional officers to arrest the illegal immigration problem. And by the way, that is a cost to states. In Tennessee in 2023, $971 million were spent relative to illegal immigrants in healthcare and education and crime. So we've got to do all of those things, and this one big beautiful bill was a good first step to get there. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, question number 5. Do you believe the burning of the American flag as a form of political protest is a constitutional right? Yes or no? Explain why. And if you do believe it is a legitimate form of political protest, would you support a constitutional amendment protecting the desecration of the American flag? First up, Representative Lee Reeves.
Well, it has been decided by the Supreme Court that burning of our flag is a First Amendment right that is protected. I think the bigger question is, why do we have people here that have come illegally from other countries, especially, or permitted to go to our university campuses, that would come and burn our flag and display theirs? It's wrong. I think we should send them back home. Entry into this country is a privilege. It's not a right. And I think we need to take a hard look at some of the visas that we are permitting people to come here with, because that is not what America is about. It's not about burning the flag. It's not about protesting the way that we do things. It's about integrating into our society. And we need immigrants. We want immigrants. And I sponsored a bill this past year that actually encouraged the federal government to streamline legal immigration, to make it shorter and less expensive, because it's so important that we get that done. But that's my answer. Is I think we need to analyze the reasons why people are doing that, and make sure that we are the America that people have dreamed about.
Next up, Matt Van Epps.
Well, when I was deployed to combat in both in Iraq and Afghanistan, I always had an American flag in my body armor, both to remember what we were doing, who we were fighting for, and as that last vestment should we not come home alive. And many of my friends paid that ultimate sacrifice in defense of our country. And when I see a flag being burned or not treated in the right way, it cuts deep. And I'm paraphrasing here, but Matt, you had a proposed solution where it should be legal, but if you beat up somebody that's burning a flag, it should be just a $20 cost. And I like that solution. But I also think that we've got to enforce our immigration laws. We've got to deport illegal aliens, but not just that. We've got to send the bill back with them as well. We've got to recoup the money that is that's been a drain on taxpayer dollars, and that's real money coming out of families' paychecks, out of our small businesses, out of our family farms, and we've got to do that. But at the end of the day, I support our Constitution and will always fight for it. Thank you.
Next, Jody Barrett.
Well, the burning of the American flag is, of course, a constitutionally protected expression of free speech. And like Mr. Van Epps and you, sir, I think we should have a constitutional right to beat the crap out of anybody that does it. That being the case, that being said, when things like that are done, it's helpful to us because it exposes who they are that walk among us, that hate this country. It's like Democrats in 2025 that are wearing masks still. If you're wearing a mask in public right now, you're telling us who you are. Thank you for showing us exactly who you are. If you're burning the American flag, you're letting us know exactly who you are and where you stand and who you stand with and who you stand against. And I thank you for that. Thank you for letting me know so I don't have to guess that my neighbor or the man down the street or the person that owns the business across the way from me does not love this country and respect the flag the same way. And those that served, thank you, sir, Mr. Van Epps, those that served and protected and defended that flag. It's the height of disrespect to our nation, to those that have served and died. And again, as much as I hate it, it is protected, it is permitted, and I thank them for letting us know exactly who they are.
Representative Bolsa.
Matt, burning the American flag is a protected form of speech. Our U.S. Supreme Court decided that issue in 1989 when it released its opinion in Texas versus Johnson. It was a 5-4 opinion, so it was a very evenly divided court, but one of my constitutional heroes, Antonin Scalia, was in the majority, and he, along with the other 4 justices in the majority, found that the First Amendment protects, as a form of speech, the actual burning of a flag. And President Trump recently issued an executive order about this, which some reported to be in conflict with the U.S. Supreme Court's decision. That simply is not true. And you actually read President Trump's executive order, which I believe was issued on August 25. He actually cites Texas versus Johnson in his executive order. But he goes further and says that what is prohibited now under his executive order is burning the American flag as a means of inciting violence. That is something that, because of President Trump's executive order, is now unlawful and can be criminally prosecuted. So in my view, President Trump has struck the appropriate balance between the disgusting act of burning the American flag and preserving law and order. So no, I don't believe we need to amend the Constitution. I like what President Trump has done.
Thank you all. Next question. Despite every Republican campaigning on cutting spending in 2024, the federal deficit currently sits at $37 trillion and continues to grow. Congress last passed all 12 individual appropriation bills before the October 1st start of the fiscal year in 1996. There are some people in this room who were not even alive last time Congress did that. Do you believe in a return to regular order, and would you support budget reforms to rein in federal spending? If so, which ones? So there are 2 questions there. Do we support a return to regular order, which means passing all 12 of those appropriations bills? And then further, what other reforms do you support to rein in federal spending? So first we have Mr. Matt Van Epps, please.
So, I think I'm supportive of addressing the broad problem. We don't have a revenue problem; we have a spending problem, and we've got to shrink the size of the federal government. I'm supportive of removing the Federal Department of Education and getting that power back into the hands of parents. We've got states and local governments, schools. They know what's best, and returning that, it's going to shrink the federal government. It's going to make it more streamlined and efficient. So I think that's a start to getting budget reforms back in line. I'm supportive of DOGE. I think DOGE was time limited and took a sledgehammer to the problem. We oftentimes need a sledgehammer and a scalpel, and we should do an annual Doge. We should keep getting after fraud, waste, and abuse. The president just had a press conference 2 weeks ago with about Social Security and all of the effective measures in just the last 8 months that have happened to streamline Social Security, to make that organization more effective so that we protect Social Security for our seniors and folks that have paid into it that deserve that. And I think that's really important. And ultimately, we've got to continue to grow our economy. We've got to continue to have low taxes to unleash American energy and continue to have our communities and our families thrive in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Lee Reeves, do you support a return to regular order? And what other budget reforms do you support to rein in federal spending, sir?
It's all the E's in my name, right? I get it. Yeah, well, it's shocking that we haven't had regular order since 1996. It's also a little shocking that people are in the room that weren't even born then, but that's a whole different thing. Yes, I absolutely support getting back to regular order and doing appropriations the right way in the U.S. House. We have to get back to that. I would like to do that. And if there's a vote put to that, I'm all for it. One of the ways that I think we need to really look at the federal government and the savings that we can take from it is, number one, getting it out of the things that it's gotten into. We've talked about that a little bit already. But, businesses, when they lack revenue, they have to make difficult choices sometimes about staff. And our federal government staff and payroll has grown and grown and grown, and it never goes backwards. But I think that we have to look at, are there technological improvements that we can make to reduce the federal government payroll? And that's something that I fully support. It came out during Doge that some of that was happening, but we need to continue that. And for most businesses, payroll is actually the biggest expense, and I think it is with the federal government as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Jody Barrett, a return to regular order, sir? And what other reforms do you support to rein in federal spending?
No, thank you for the question. I actually mentioned regular order earlier in an answer, and it's important. And I think if you go back to 96 with Newt Gingrich and the Republican majority at the time and the Contract for America, that's what made that possible for us to have balanced budgets with a Democrat president and Bill Clinton at the time. And we need that again. We have a majority now with the Republican Party in the House and the Senate. Slim, but it is a majority. And we should be stretching our legs with that majority. We should be pushing the envelope. We should be bringing back a Contract with America Part 2 to actually go back to regular order. Establish a budget, an annual budget, so that we know exactly what we're going to spend and how we're going to pay for it. That's how you have to operate your households. That's how small business owners have to operate their businesses in America. It should be how our government works. It's how we do it here in Tennessee. We balance the budget every year because we are constitutionally required to do so. And I would propose and support an effort to have a constitutional amendment to require a balanced budget with our federal government.
Thank you, sir. Representative Bolso, return to regular order, sir. And what other reforms do you support?
Yes, Michael. Obviously, we need to return to regular order. We're only 30 years removed from Newt Gingrich passing 4 consecutive balanced budgets, which wasn't that long ago. I can remember each one of those balanced budgets in the mid-1990s. But our government has gotten, unfortunately, in a position where 80% of spending is now what's called mandatory spending. Only 20% is discretionary spending. That 80% of mandatory spending is made up of approximately 66% of entitlement spending and 14% spending on the national debt. So, Michael, where we have to look is not in cutting discretionary spending, although there is some cuts that can be made there. We really need to look at these social welfare programs that have just exponentially blossomed over the last 100 years. We now spend over right at $1 trillion a year in social welfare programs that are administered by 13 of our 16 cabinet-level departments. That is where we need to cut. You know, we sometimes think it's crazy that New York is about to elect a socialist mayor, Zoran Mandami, but we unfortunately are at a position where our own federal budget now reflects more of a socialist country than a constitutional republic. We need to return to a constitutional republic.
We are approaching the top of the hour, about 4 minutes until 8 o'clock. Thank you for being with us as we continue our Tennessee Congressional District 7 debate amongst the Republican Party primary candidates, the upper tier candidates, brought to you by SuperTalk 99.7 WTN and Americans for Prosperity and the AFP Foundation. You're listening on radio on WWTN Hendersonville, Nashville. I legally have to do that, gentlemen, because of the Federal Communications Commission, something that y'all might have some say in at some point down the road. Question number 7. At a press conference last month, August 11th, I believe it was, President Trump announced that he was looking into the possibility of reclassifying marijuana as a Schedule III drug. As you gentlemen may know, it has long been classified since the early 1970s, 1973, as a Schedule I narcotic along the lines of LSD, and heroin considered to be a, quote, considerably dangerous drug. If reclassified, marijuana would be treated in the same line as drugs like Tylenol with codeine, anabolic steroids, which may or may not, per state regulation, be prescribed by licensed healthcare providers and dispensed by licensed pharmacies. Do you specifically support the reclassification of marijuana to Schedule III? And do you generally support the legalization of marijuana either for medicinal or recreational use? We will start with Representative Jody Barrett.
How did I know you were going to get me first on that one?
Dang Grok.
I know, right? Grok, Elon. The reclassification of marijuana as it relates to how we are treating it in the criminal justice system, I think is long since overdue. As a child of the 80s in 6th grade, I had my Just Say No t-shirt. I went through that whole war on drugs, which has failed miserably in this country. We have spent billions trying to eradicate drugs completely from our society, and it just simply has been a losing battle. So what we need to do is figure out how we're going to deal with it. I'm not a proponent of casual recreational use. I've seen far too many issues in other states that have legalized it, unintended consequences. There are certainly medical uses that are necessary, and we need to continue to explore and promote that type of use of cannabinoids. But as it relates to the criminal justice system, again, part of the reason why our prisons and our jails are overcrowded and chock full of people that have little simple possession charges or drug issues as it relates to marijuana, they don't need to be in prison. They need to be getting help with multiple addiction issues, not just marijuana, opioids, and everything else. And so our entire criminal justice system and code needs to be taken a look at, hard look at, and we need to do some serious reforms.
Next up, Lee Reeves.
You know, this is a complicated issue. I went to a drug court benefit several months ago and talked to a number of the judges who participated in that program, and it was a shocking statistic to hear that almost all of the people that ultimately had issues that required and landed them in drug court started with marijuana. And so I don't support the recreational use, but I do think that there can be a use for medical marijuana with guardrails, that it needs to be prescribed and overseen the way that any drug that's permitted by the U.S. government is. And so I think it's worth looking at. It's not top of my priority list, but I do feel very strongly that because of the drug court's impact on folks that I've seen, and by the way, I went out to Dixon County and met with some rehabilitation homes out there, and they reported the same thing, that people are getting right, but where they started was the recreational use of marijuana. So, thank you.
Next up, Gino Bolso.
Matt, I am not in favor of rescheduling marijuana as a Schedule III drug, nor am I in favor of legalizing marijuana recreationally or otherwise, because of two reasons, principally. One, we have a vast body of data to look at now. We can see what has happened in Colorado. We can see what has happened in other states that have gone down this path of legalizing marijuana, and the results have just been horrific. The fatalities in Colorado from drivers who are driving under the influence of marijuana have increased dramatically, and that's the same that we've seen with experiences in other states. I think the second reason, Matt, is that, you know, as Aristotle said many years ago in the Politics, that the law is a teacher. And when you get to the point that you legalize marijuana, it sends a signal to folks, especially to young people, that if the law allows it, it must be okay. That is exactly the wrong signal to send to young folks, because this is and has shown to be and is proven to be a gateway type of drug. And it's dangerous. In my view, Tennessee has gone probably a little farther than we should have in legitimizing the use of gummies and other things that you can get at some of these cannabis shops. So I'm in favor of leaving the drug as a Schedule I federal narcotic and not legitimizing it in any way.
Finally, on this question, Matt Van Epps.
So the way that I would approach this problem, I served as the commissioner of the Tennessee Department of General Services, leading a team of about 400 folks, and I operate as a database decision maker and want to see what the facts and the data are. I understand that this is in a research phase right now to more fully understand what the impacts would be, and I think that's what we have to evaluate. We have to evaluate what's the return on investment in terms of reducing recidivism, in terms of helping folks. I think on the medicinal side, I think about the mental health crisis that we have in our country. There's a small percentage of veterans who that suffer from mental health issues and post-traumatic stress, and we've got to address that. This is not the single solution for it, but it might be a part of that. And I want to see what the data shows on that. What I for sure don't want to do from a security aspect is give any more power to narco-terrorists. We saw the president take decisive action against a drug boat leaving Venezuela, and this is a president that says what he's going to do, and he does it. And he drew a clear line because that's a danger to our society, and we've got to stop that. The other thing that I would do is ask our law enforcement, pull the team together to understand what the impacts would be from a community basis. So that would be the approach that I would take to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. After that very serious question, I have an even more serious question. Representative Gino Bolso, favorite flavor of ice cream?
Chocolate.
Matt Van Epps.
It's vanilla, but I like to put all kinds of stuff on top of it. So,
I am showing favoritism in these answers, or my responses for this, by the way. Jody Barrett.
Rocky Road.
All right. And Lee Reeves.
Well, I no longer eat ice cream, but I would have said mint chocolate chip.
Okay. Thank you all very much. It was a palate cleanser for you all. Yeah.
A little halfway point palate cleanser for everybody.
All right.
Sure.
The actual serious question. Republican voters in this room often complain that on both the state and federal level, executive overreach has become a serious problem. We typically see that from both administration or both sides of the aisle, right? Lawmakers are often accused of abdicating their lawmaking authority to the executive branch. This results in rules and regulations that have the force of law and massive negative economic impacts on both businesses and individuals. The REINS Act has been offered as a solution to executive overreach and was in fact placed into the Big Beautiful Bill, but it was ultimately stripped out by the Senate parliamentarian. Do you support the REINS Act as a mechanism to return power and the lawmaking authority back to lawmakers, as one of you will be, even if it is perceived of stripping the Trump administration or whatever the next administration is from some of its power? That question first goes to Representative Gino Bolso.
Michael, the short answer is yes. I think we have seen over the years that both executive and legislative authority at the state and federal levels has been delegated to administrative agencies that are not responsive to the people. We need to have our elected officials either in the legislative branch or in the executive branch making laws. This is certainly something that has caused difficulty in the federal system when you take, for example, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which has gone well beyond its rulemaking authority at times to create rules and regulations that should have required congressional oversight and approval, which has sometimes caused disruption in our federal securities markets. So, yes, I am someone who believes that we have 3 branches of government, not 4. We have legislative, executive, and judicial. We do not need to have this deep state, administrative state type of a 4th branch of government that our founders never intended.
Thank you, sir. If any of you need me to repeat that, because I know it was a little long-winded, but Matt Van Epps, you're next, sir.
Well, I haven't read that bill, but it's something that I would do and take a close look at. You know, I think a team approach is so important. I think that's part of what we're bringing to this race is boots on the ground leadership and the ability to build teams and pull folks together and understand how to operate effectively with that. And I think that extends to Speaker Johnson's team and working with the Speaker to and with the White House to address these kind of issues. I'm a less regulation, cut red tape type of person. I think shrinking the size of the federal government is incredibly important. Returning power to the states, as I mentioned before, getting it as close to decision makers as possible who know the real problems and the real issues. And so that's what I would be focused on with this.
Thank you, sir. Representative Barrett, same question.
Well, thank you. No, the REINS Act being taken out of the One Big Beautiful Bill is one of the issues that I was referencing that the Freedom Caucus was pushing that got cut out before it got sent back to the House. And look, we've dealt with this at the state level where we pass laws and we put in the legislation that we pass that we leave it up to the department to promulgate rules as to how that bill or how that law is going to be implemented. And that is, I agree, it is an abdication of our authority and our responsibility to the people that elected us. It's not enough to adopt a law or pass a new piece of legislation. We have to go further and give instruction as to how that legislation is going to be imposed. I'll give you the example on the federal level, and that's the ATF. Allowing the ATF to make rules and decisions that violate our Second Amendment rights when it comes to pistol braces, suppressors, all of that. Look, somebody mentioned earlier about disbanding the Department of Education. I would start with the ATF. Let's start there. Get rid of it.
Thank you, sir. Representative Reeves.
Yeah, thank you. So I know that the REINS Act is a priority of Americans for Prosperity, and it's really trying to get government right again. I've been encouraged over the last year or so, and I can't remember the name of the Supreme Court case, but that case essentially peeled back the administrative state and said that the agencies in the executive branch cannot exceed the authority of the law that they're operating under. And I'm very encouraged by that, and I think that a lot of laws are ultimately going to be peeled back, and they should be, because I've been in the real estate industry for a number of years, and I know that the Federal Housing Administration and Fannie Mae, the organizations that oversee Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, have read into law things that are simply not there. And we have seen the federal government in particular exceed its authority. And whether the REINS Act passes or not, I am very hopeful that people will challenge those regulatory decisions that have the force and effect of law and peel them back.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so I was unaware that we were asking the hardball questions like ice cream. So I think I have a quick palate cleanser question of my own before I go on to question number 9 from me. The wife's out of town with the family. It's Saturday. You wake up. What is the perfect idea of a Saturday afternoon for you with nothing else to do, Matt Van Epps?
Well, after I get all the work and the chores out of the way, get that done. But it's watching college football. So that, and Matt, we've talked about this. I'm an Army football fan. That's number one in that. And I did disclose on Matt's program that I'm originally from Ohio, so I'm an Ohio State fan, which did not. Yeah, that was the response too. But my dad never went to college and was drafted into Vietnam, and he was an Ohio State fan, so I am too.
Jody Barrett, the family's out of town. What's a perfect Saturday afternoon?
Round of golf with Matt Murphy at Greystone Golf Club in Dixon. How about that?
Gino Bolso, can you think of something better to do than spend your Saturday afternoon with me?
Yes. Rereading the Constitution.
The bar's that's not a high bar, but.
All right, did I get to everybody? Lee, what about your Saturday afternoon?
Well, I'll tell you, and I know this sounds silly to some folks, but I'm in a neighborhood that has a cornhole league, and I am on a cornhole team. And our team name is Fire in the Hole. And so it would be getting together with my teammates and playing a little cornhole.
Very good. Very good. All right. The 7th Congressional District, as all of you gentlemen well know, is home to Fort Campbell, supporting the 4th largest military population in the United States Army. Thank you to Fort Campbell. Veterans often call my radio show and talk about the poor quality of health care that they receive through the VA. What is your solution as a congressman serving the health care needs of the Middle Tennessee veteran population? And we start with Matt Van Epps.
Well, thank you so much for this question. Having served at Fort Campbell in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, my brother served in the 101st Airborne Division. The installation is so important to us, both from the units and the force projection capability, from the economic drivers, $10 billion in annual economic impact. It's incredible. And what we have to always care for our active service members and our veterans. I've been to VA. I have VA care. I go to VA care, and I've had both a good experience and I've also had a not good experience. And I think what we have to do, the president this year enabled VA to have, when soldiers transition out, to have 12 months of private care, and so they're able to go to the doctor that is closest to them, that makes sense. I think more choice is better, more freedom is better. And so we've got to enable veterans to get care for them and their families where and when they need it. And I think that is incredibly important. Fort Campbell is also, I mean, from an economic side, we've got to help with veterans that are transitioning out. We built something called the Governor's Veteran Fellowship Program. And so when you get veterans into communities and tied into good paying jobs when they get out, it's also helpful on a healthcare side. And it's a holistic approach that we have to take for veterans, their families, and their kids. Thanks.
Jody Barrett.
Well, first, I would applaud the effort of Congressman Ogles to get a CBOC brought to Nashville in Davidson County. That is a huge thing for our veterans. Really, it comes down to efficiency and access. And Montgomery County obviously has probably the most concentrated population of veterans in the 7th District, but we have them all across the counties. I currently represent, as I said earlier, the 69th House District in Dixon, Hickman, and Lewis County, and we have a very vibrant, strong veteran community in those counties, and they have the same struggles, and that is access to getting to and from the VA, having to drive an hour and a half in order to get into Nashville or Vanderbilt. And so we've got to be able to meet them where they are. I think the CBOC model, providing outpatient clinics, going out into the rural communities to try to get these places where every veteran is less than an hour's drive away from getting the care that they need, opening up telemedicine options to be able to get folks to get online. That goes back to making sure we're getting rural broadband out in these areas where folks get the help that they need. But I think there's also an opportunity with the rural healthcare crisis that we're facing, with hospitals shutting down in the rural communities, that a partnership between the VA and these rural hospitals could really put a shot in the arm to give a business model that would allow them to be able to survive.
Next up, Gino Bolsa.
Matt, let me answer your question in two ways. First, I think that working with Doug Collins at the Department of Veterans Affairs is going to be a priority of mine to make sure that not just veterans, but their families have adequate medical care, because we're dealing with folks who have given of themselves and made significant sacrifices for the security of the rest of us. And secondly, in Tennessee, it seems to me that the veterans that we have, especially in District 7, are just an amazing gift to all of us, because veterans, after their service at Fort Campbell, tend to stay here in Montgomery County. And it's such a wonderful thing for our young folks to be able to look up to veterans as an example. And I was very proud in the state legislature to have earlier this year drafted and passed through the House committees the Valor Act, which recognized the service of our veteran community, especially those who were permanently and totally disabled, in giving tax exemptions for local property taxes. So first, Matt, I do think we need to go ahead and provide the most efficient health care that we can to our veterans. And second, I think we need to make Tennessee as welcoming a state as we can, perhaps the most welcoming state in the union, so we attract veterans here because of the impact it has, particularly on our youth.
And finally, Lee Reeves.
Thank you. Well, Fort Campbell obviously is an incredibly important part of the 7th District, and we need to support our veterans. I've talked to several about this very issue, and what they've said to me is that they can access health care in many places, but we need to lower the thresholds for which they can access those services. And so that's something that I think we should absolutely look for. I know that in Montgomery, for instance, we've got 2 new hospitals coming in. I think our veterans should be able to access health care wherever they want to access health care. It is part of the free market. It's what conservatives have argued for writ large for many, many years. And I think competition makes things better. And I think they should compete for the veterans who need those health services. Fort Campbell is the 911 for our whole country. And so we've got to take care of our veterans, especially those at Fort Campbell. I will fight any BRAC that comes, that even sounds like it might happen. We cannot close bases. We will not close ever or reduce Fort Campbell, and I will fight for that. And then the only other thing I'll say is just we have health issues that underlie all of America, not just our veterans, and that's something that I would like to work with Secretary Kennedy to help find solutions for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Politics is tough. I know I've met each and every one of you. I admire a lot about each and every one of you. I'd like for you all individually to look down the row or address each one of your opponents in this race and tell them each one thing that you admire about them. We'll start with you, Barrett.
Sure. First of all, to my friend, Representative Bolso, that we came in together as freshmen, served for 3 years in the state legislature. He's an extremely brilliant constitutional scholar. There's no doubt about it. And he's been, he deserves a round of applause. And he's also been an extremely successful and impactful attorney in this community for 30 years now. And he deserves all the accolades that he gets for that. Representative Reeves, who is new to the legislature but came in and made a big impact very early on. He's done tremendous work. I have no doubt that he will continue to do that at whatever level that he's at, whether it's at the state or the federal level. And Matt, you can't talk about you can't talk about Matt Van Epps without talking about his service to the country and his dedication. Yeah. And his dedication to the defense of our nation, our freedom, and our liberties. I have the utmost respect for him in the sacrifices that he has made, and his brother as well. And what you're doing now by running for this office with your wife and young child at home, that is a sacrifice as well, and it does not go unnoticed. And I'm appreciative for your willingness to do that and put your family in that position.
Thank you, Representative. Mr. Van Epps, what do you admire most about these gentlemen?
Well, I think to start, I mean, each is his practice law, and that's admirable. Each being an attorney and raising their hand to serve our state. I think that is also incredibly admirable. It takes, I think I'm a first-time candidate, and so seeing a lot of this now for the first time, it's a lot of work and effort, and I have a lot of respect for what these gentlemen have done previously as well.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Reeves, what do you respect most about each individual on the stage?
Sure. Well, I'll start with Matt. I mean, obviously, you've served our country very well, and in several different respects. And so I absolutely respect that. I've got family in the military, actually right now, that have just gone through basic, and so that you've been there and done that successfully is a huge thing. I don't know that I really would have thought about it unless you said, but yeah, we're all attorneys up here, so I know. Well, I'm a recovering lawyer, just to be clear. But Jody, I know you own a title company, and I have been in that world, and I know that's very tough. And so I know you go to work every day and try to help people get those things done. And I know you've worked very hard in the legislature to try to move the ball as well. And Gino, I would just say the same thing. I think your legal mind is respected by everyone up on the Hill, and so. And then I would say, really, all three, we've got families and children that we all care about. And I know that we all go through a lot and put some things aside and then kind of flex back into family life. And that can be tough running for office. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Bolso, individually, what do you respect most about your opponents?
Sure. Well, I'll start with my colleague, Jody Barrett. Jody is somebody who is passionate about his community, particularly the rural communities. And Jody is somebody who doesn't back down regardless of the consequences to himself personally. That is a very admirable quality. With my colleague, Lee Reeves, one thing that just strikes me about Lee is just how beautiful his family is. I know his wife, Claire, very well. I know his daughters. And Lee's raising a wonderful family, which continues to be the core, not just of our nation, but of our civilization. And so the more families we have like the Reeves family in our community, in our state, in our country, the better. And Matt Van Epps, what are you going to say? That man flew Chinook and Apache helicopters into combat with people shooting at him. And he was responsible not just for his own life, but for the lives of everyone on each of those missions on the helicopter. And we can do nothing but just give Matt our thanks collectively for that kind of bravery and heroism.
Thank you.
Hey, now that we have that out of the way, what do you really hate about that?
Can I go first?
Man, I could just give all of them a big hug right now.
His hair.
I want to give each other a hug. All right, to the serious questions again. energy utilities in Tennessee energy utilities, as in utility companies, in Tennessee are constantly issuing rolling brownouts here over the past couple of years. When I was growing up, I've never experienced that happening here in the state of Tennessee. Not only that, they're also telling us that we need to set our thermostats to almost 80 degrees in the middle of summer. Please raise your hand if you're going to do that. That's what I thought. So as we also see rapid advancements in artificial intelligence, our energy demand and our generation capacity or desire to generate more in our capacities are increasing at levels we've never seen before. Not to mention the fact that Middle Tennessee, the state of Tennessee as a whole, our population is growing here. In many cases, government permitting hurdles and bureaucracy are holding us back when it comes to energy production. What steps would you take as a member of Congress to ensure that we can meet tomorrow's energy demands? And we will start with Representative Jody Barrett.
Well, thank you. The last part of the question, can you repeat that again, just so I make sure?
Let me see here. What steps would you take as a member of Congress to ensure that we can meet tomorrow's energy demands, knowing that we face incredible bureaucracy and red tape when it comes to energy production in this state?
Right. So it was mentioned earlier, the SMNR are the small modular nuclear reactors. That is the future for energy, particularly here in Tennessee. That's the direction that TVA is going to be going in. The first step to the question talking about the rolling brownouts, that all goes back to our dear friend Barack Obama and his Green New Deal policies. The fight that we just had with TVA in Cheatham County, trying to put a methane plant in the middle of 2,000 acres in Cheatham County with 5 century farms, 5 schools within 5 miles, when the community there clearly did not want or need that in their backyard. That is all a counter. It's a counter product of what happens when you shut down the coal production, you shut down coal power production in New Johnsonville. And that's what happened with the Obama administration and the Biden administration when they came in and they tore the smokestacks down. Immediately after that, we had the brownouts here in Middle Tennessee. And now they've replaced that with 10 gas-powered turbines. They killed 260 jobs in New Johnsonville, killed the local economy in Humphreys County and Benton County, and they're sitting there screaming to TVA going, please come back. Please bring this methane plant that you're talking about doing, bring that power and those jobs back to that area. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to encourage them to do so.
Thank you, sir. Representative Reeves.
So we have energy costs that are amongst the lowest in the United States here in Tennessee, but our population growth has certainly put pressure on the provision of electricity and energy. And I think the future really is in modular and packaged nuclear. And I know that we've allocated funds in our last budget to put one of the first new nuclear plants in the country over at the Clinch River site. And I think it's very important that we get that done, we follow it through, and then we duplicate and replicate that across the country. But that really is the wave of the future. We've gotten so far in our nuclear technology, but we haven't had any nuclear plants. And it's a very different technology than it ever was. And I think we've got to do that as soon as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Matt Van Epps.
So as I mentioned before, too, it is nuclear, small modular reactors. That reactor that's planned for the Clinch River site is anticipated to go online in 2032. It'll be the first in the United States, but it won't be the first in North America. Toronto will actually have several in front of us, and I think we need to be able to drive that technology as fast and as safe as possible. When you look at nuclear submarines, the U.S. Navy's been doing this for a very long time. They never have to refuel, and no one gets sick. And so we know how to do this safely and well. And once we get that small modular reactor up and running, we'll have a blueprint for how to do it faster, more efficiently. And I think that's really important. Just this week, too, the first nuclear recycling, fuel recycling location is going to be in Tennessee as well, which is huge. It's the first time a private company is going to be able to do nuclear fuel recycling. That's going to make our small modular reactors and that effort more efficient, and it's going to drive things further. And I think that's when the private sector is able to lean in. We see these really innovative things happening that will have great effects for everyone, driving down costs for fuel, for feed, for fertilizer, really good for our farmers, good for our small businesses, good for all of us at the gas pump. And so I'm fully supportive of that. That deficit that we have is like 500 gigawatts. It's like 500 nuclear plant deficit in the country. So we've got to keep leaning into it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Representative Bolso.
You know, Michael, in Congress, the best thing that you can do to improve our nation's energy production is to keep taxes low on companies that are innovating in the area of energy, and also reduce unnecessary regulations on companies in the energy sector. You know, we talked earlier about the One Big Beautiful Bill, and one of the things that it did was it reversed the Green New Deal that had been passed during the Biden administration, which put handcuffs on so much energy production across the country. Obviously, you know, wind and solar and those forms of energy that were part of the Green New Deal have a place, but it's not a prominent place in the final analysis in the production of energy. And the type of modular nuclear energy that's available today is not your grandfather's nuclear energy of the 70s and 80s. And what we've seen is that nuclear energy is not just the most efficient form of energy that we can produce, but it can also be the safest and be the most environmentally friendly. So as a member of Congress, our role is to understand the importance of having a robust energy policy and making sure that the laws in place do not impose a tax or regulatory burden on the companies that is unnecessary.
Thank you, sir.
All right, gentlemen, currently we have two major conflicts around the globe that we've heard about quite a bit and we've talked about quite a bit in my line of work. One involving the nation of Israel and the terrorist organization Hamas, and another involving the warring nations of Russia and Ukraine. What, if anything, would you change about our current policy and approach from a military standpoint, and what, if anything, would necessitate, in your mind, boots on the ground in either or both of these conflicts? We'll start with Matt Van Epps.
Well, it starts with an incredibly strong military, and that's where it starts. We have to keep investing in technologies that outpace our competitors. If you saw this past week, China they rolled out a massive military parade, and the analysis from that is they have parity with many of our drones, our equipment, nuclear technology, and that's unacceptable. We have got to continue to invest in the technology to outpace China. And so one example, so I mentioned before, but the president drew a clear red line with Iran. And when he was willing to bring them to the negotiating table and execute peace through strength, which I agree with, and when they decided not to adhere to that, he launched a strike with 140 aircraft, the longest deep strike in American history, in a complex attack that I'm very familiar with. And I stand with Israel. I'm 100% pro-Israel. I would say the most pro-Israel person on the stage. And I think with that, we have to continue to invest in peace through strength. And he drew that line. And so it had a great outcome where it positioned us as leaders in the world again to be respected in the world. And so we should, boots on the ground should be the absolute last case. We should execute diplomatic, economic, and information before we put military boots on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee Reeves, you're next.
So it's really two different questions. What would you do in the case of Israel and Hamas and Russia and Ukraine? And as a congressperson, you're really talking about committee hearings and providing funding mechanisms for that. I would say this, I will follow President Trump's lead. Whoever is elected to this role has 11 months before the next election. And so I am running specifically to support President Trump and his agenda because he has a very good handle on this. I supported his strikes against Iran. I think he did a great job with that and got out. I am absolutely and unequivocally supporting Israel, just to be clear. They have technology that is developed and used on the ground, and that benefits America in so many ways. Iron Dome and Iron Beam, and we have to absolutely protect Israel. They are our only ally in that region, and most important ally. In terms of Russia and Ukraine, I'm going to follow the president's lead on that, frankly.
Next up, Jody Barrett.
Thank you. All of this goes together. Our economic strength is our best defense. What makes America strong is our economy has been the leader and the envy of the world forever. You go back to our adversaries during the Cold War with Russia. We beat them not with boots on the ground, not with bullets, not with bombs. We beat them with economics. We bled them dry. And the only way that we can be successful in these global conflicts now is to continue to innovate and improve our economic strength, invest in our military, make sure that we continue to have the strongest, most powerful, most feared military force the planet's ever seen. The peace through strength is the only way out. And occasionally, as we saw with our friends in Iran, we may have to show them that strength occasionally just to let them know that we're not afraid to use it. But warfare anymore is not traditional like it was even back during Desert Storm when we went into Iraq. It's done digitally now. It's done with cyber warfare. It's done with drones. It's done with satellites. So boots on the ground is an absolute last case scenario that we need to all make sure that we are trying to avoid at all costs.
Gino Bolsa.
Matt, I'm opposed to boots on the ground either in the Middle East or in the Ukraine, but let me address the Ukraine first in terms of a change in policy. Obviously, NATO has given us a lot of stability. I mean, it came into being in the 1940s. It initially had 12 member states. It's grown to 32 member states, including 3 of the former Soviet republics, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. And I think one reason why Putin was emboldened to attack Ukraine is that it did not have the security guarantees that these other countries did. And obviously, we're beyond the point now where Ukraine can be admitted as part of any type of a peace resolution into NATO. But I think we can give, as part of a peace process, security guarantees that are similar to those that are set out in Article 5 of the NATO Charter to the other 32 countries that are in NATO. With regard to Israel, I think Israel's our greatest ally, and I'll challenge my good friend Matt Van Epps about who's the biggest supporter of Israel. You know, I went to Israel 6 weeks after the horrific Hamas attacks on October 7 of 2023 to get a better handle of what happened, and I was able to meet with many members of the Knesset, of the IDF. I met some of the victims who had been shot that day by Hamas. And what needs to happen there is that there needs to be a refocus on the education of Palestinian children because, unfortunately, Israel is a nation that just wants peace. It's surrounded by 20 Arab states. And if the arms were dropped, Israel, unfortunately, would lose the advantage that it has in peaceful negotiations.
Representative Jody Barrett, what's your favorite band?
Huey Lewis and the News. Yeah, it's true. Sorry.
I don't think they liked it. Representative Bolso, favorite band, sir?
My favorite band?
Yes, sir.
Eagles.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Reeves?
I got to go with Credence.
Clearwater? Yeah. Okay. Mr. Van Epps?
Luke Combs.
Luke Combs. Interesting. Mr. Barrett?
You're getting instructions from the gallery.
From the real boss.
Well, we know who the real boss is. Mr. Barrett,
You want me to go?
Senator Blackburn has introduced legislation to revoke the teachers' union's federal charter, which provides it with special benefits. Do you support or oppose the National Education Association having a federal charter?
No, we should absolutely revoke their charter.
Mr. Bolso?
Yeah, I do not support the NEA federal charter. No.
Mr. Reeves?
It's an easy one. Yeah, we ought to revoke it. Absolutely.
Mr. Van Epps?
Revoke it. I'm very pro school choice.
Thank you.
All right. My next question is a two-parter involving the rapidly changing world of social media platforms, the internet, and specifically artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is insane. It is rapidly changing the world around us, and frankly, social media platforms are doing the same thing, particularly with the younger generations. Some feel that it ought to be regulated by our government, either artificial intelligence specifically, social media specifically, or both as a combination. Others feel like that regulating AI in particular would give other nations, specifically China, a dominant place in that space. What is the federal government's role in regulating, one, artificial intelligence, and regulating or controlling through age restrictions or otherwise social media spaces as a way to protect the younger generation? And I will start with Matt Van Epps.
So, I talked about this a little too in my just in my intro, but I think we've got to get kids to put their phones down and get back outside. And I think so much of this is about empowering parents. And there's a staggering statistic about the mental health issue with kids and cell phone use, kids under 12 who commit suicide, which is absolutely just appalling to think about. And it's a multifaceted solution that we're gonna have to approach. I think as far as AI is concerned, we have to continue to lead the world in AI, in chips with our great companies, and the president is doing that right now. The meeting that he just hosted at the White House with AI and tech leaders, I think, is really important. Bringing folks together to be a part of the solution. We have to continue to export those chips so that we set the rules on AI. We don't want China. That's another area that China is pushing really hard. And we've got to do that so that we have the rules and the regulations set across the world. And so our allies and partners want to buy American-made products. It's part of why we need to re-onshore American manufacturing. So we shore up our supply chain, we make that here, and that will allow us to set the rules and the tone for that technology.
Lee Reeves, you're next. According to artificial intelligence, oddly enough.
I was going to note that. It was an interesting intro. When I got to the state legislature, I was put on the education committee, and the committee chair gave me a book called Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And it is absolutely a fascinating study in the impact of social media and cell phone use on our kids. Now, I think this is an interesting area where I look at the federal government, and I think in most cases this should be regulated by the states. Our great Senator Marsha Blackburn actually pulled something out of the One Big Beautiful Bill that allowed Tennessee to continue to regulate AI. We just passed something called the Elvis Act this past session that protects intellectual property related to certain likenesses and voices and faces. And I think it's important that states lead on this. And I think states can, actually. As a parent, we have decided for our own kids that they don't get social media until age 16, so that we have a year or two to get them ready for the real world, but not before then. And I'll just note one other thing. In the state of Tennessee, we actually passed a law this past session that has school boards set local cell phone policies for their own school districts. And Williamson County has removed cell phones from the classroom, and lunchtime is the only exception. Thank you.
My next response would be from Gino. Gino, I am told by the rule keepers that you name-checked in your last response and in referring to Matt Van Epps. And I'm the messenger to tell you that we're going to go to Jody Barrett for the next answer on AI. We'll have one more question after this in closing statements, but Jody.
Well, there's a reason we don't let minors drink alcohol, drive cars, purchase guns, all of these things, because they're not ready for that. They're not qualified to handle those things. Those are adult issues. And so social media is no different. We know now that what happens on social media and the effect that it has on young people who have frontal lobes that are still developing, the social issues, the depression, the self-doubt, these are all real issues that our young people are dealing with. And here in Tennessee, we've taken steps to address age verification as it relates to pornographic sites, and we've also passed legislation dealing with the social media sites as well. I have legislation pending now before the state legislature to try to increase access to civil rights and penalties that each of you as parents would be able to have access to the courts to enforce these age verification rules. And as it relates to AI regulations, we have to make sure that what's going on in that world and in that industry is regulated to the extent that it is protective for the United States and America First interests.
All right, final question before closing statements. In my world as a talk show host, I hear quite a bit about the term rhino, R-I-N-O, Republican in name only. I'm curious from each of you, what informs you in your world that you are a Republican, and how, if in any way, is that different from being a conservative? Gino Bolso, you're first.
Matt, I focus more on the term conservative than Republican, because I consider myself a conservative, and I consider the Republican Party a party of conservatives. In his book, A Conservative Mind, Russell Kirk defined a conservative as someone who respects the traditions of our ancestors. And I think that describes my political philosophy to a T, that a conservative is someone who acts slowly to change what needs to be changed, but not in a radical way. And a perfect example is the idea that our federal government is a government of limited powers. And to the extent that you begin to creep and take more power away from states or take more rights away from the people, those are things that we as conservatives really have difficulty going along with. We are here as conservatives to preserve the freedom and liberties that we started with in 1776 and added to with the Civil War amendments in 1865, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. So in my view, it's not a question of Republican or Rhino. It's a question of being conservative, being respectful of the traditions of our political ancestors and moving slowly to develop change that is inevitable.
Next up, Jody Barrett.
Well, thank you for the question. When you define conservatism, there's a spectrum. You have fiscal conservatives, social conservatives, constitutional conservatives, evangelical conservatives. There's any number of lanes where someone can go down. But when you're trying to determine if someone is a Republican, are they a conservative Republican, you have to look at how they approach problem solving. And if your first approach to any issue that faces our government as a legislator or an elected official is to find a government solution to that problem that uses government tax dollars and increases the government bureaucracy, then I would suggest to you that you are not a conservative. If you take that same approach to that problem and you look for private solutions, free market capitalism solutions, you lean on personal responsibility of the individual and the personal liberty of the individual, then that's what makes you a conservative. And I think that's where some of us part when we start looking at these issues that face not only our state but our nation is where do we begin? What is the first jump off point when we're trying to figure out how we're going to tackle that problem? That's why I think I have a 100% conservative voting record, because I start there.
Lee Reeves.
So I've been a Republican my whole life. I was president of my college Republicans at a very liberal university and stood up to the liberals and the Democrats. So what is a conservative? Well, I go back to The Conscience of a Conservative, a book written by Barry Goldwater. I think that was where a lot of us formed our philosophy around conservatism. Reagan once said that our 80% friend is not our 20% enemy. And I think that's true. And that's how you get things done. But I think that you've got to look at, is there a government solution, or is there a solution that's outside of government? That's what I come back to for me. The notion of being a conservative has been twisted by some. And I think that we've got to be very careful about that. I think we've got to be principled in looking at that. And I think we need to analyze whether or not the folks running in this race are really conservatives and will stand with Donald Trump or not.
Matt Van Epps.
Well, I think that first part of that question, what defines me? My faith, my family, waking up every day and wanting to do what's best for my wife and my daughter, wanting my daughter to be proud of me is so incredibly important to me. My life is still defined by the Army values. I still wear the uniform: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. The Army values are still core to who I am and so important. And this race is not about me. It's about the team. It's about all of us. And I think striving to be a servant leader and to put others first is incredibly important. It's important as a leader. It's important as a conservative. And I think as an America First conservative, wanting to drive that agenda forward, wanting to work to ensure we have limited government, that more power is returned to all of us, more freedom is better, and working hard to ensure that we do that every day. Limited government is knowing how to do more with less. And at the very end of the day, it's about American exceptionalism. We are the best country this world has ever seen, and we are that city on a hill, and our best days are still ahead of us.
Thank you all. Before we go into closing statements, I want to personally thank everyone in the room. I know that there was really bad weather tonight. I know a lot of people stayed home. I know it means a lot to these candidates that you all decided to come out tonight despite the weather conditions. It means a lot to myself, 99.7, Matt Murphy. So we're very appreciative of you all. We're going to do closing statements now. I believe the candidates may hang around a little bit afterwards. We are not doing a straw poll, by the way. Yeah, you're welcome.
You're all winners.
You're all welcome. Closing statements. We'll start with Mr. Van Epps. Go ahead, sir.
Well, first and foremost, thank you all for being here. This is what makes our country great. is all of us coming together as patriots and coming together to talk about the issues and evaluate candidates. And so this is what our democracy, what our republic is all about. I think what separates me and defines me is real-world boots-on-the-ground experience in special operations, small business, and state government, knowing how to take the fight forward. I've been shot at in combat, and we don't quit. As a Night Stalker, part of our creed says we'd rather die than quit, and those are not just words. That's an ethos that we take forward, and that's the same fight that I will take forward on behalf of all of us. I've been honored to be endorsed by Mark Green and over 20 other local officials, from DAs to highway superintendents, because our grassroots movement is so strong and real, and I'd ask all of you to join that. There's a long-term family saying that's chin up and head down, and that means to avoid the bullets, stay positive, and move forward, and that's what we're doing. I'd ask for your vote and your support. Thank you so much.
Mr. Bolso.
Do you think our federal government is too big? Do you think it taxes too much? Do you think it spends too much? Do you think it's fair that we burden our children and grandchildren with a national debt of $37.2 trillion? If the answer to those questions is that, in fact, you agree that our government is too big, that it taxes too much, that it spends too much, and that it's unfair and immoral to pass on this debt to our grandchildren, go to votegeno.com and join us. My wife, Kathy, and I have been blessed with 5 children and 8 grandchildren. It's those grandchildren, yours and mine, that I'm thinking of, and that's why I'm here. If you trust me to go to Washington and give the people the type of government that our founders intended, I promise I will not let you down.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Reeves?
First, I want to thank everyone who's here and listening on the radio or Facebook. The question in this race really is, who is the America First candidate? Who will go to Washington and support President Donald J. Trump for the remaining 11 months of this term? Who has been effective in the State House, not just introducing bills, but passing bills? I have supported Donald J. Trump as president since 2016. I have passed bills. I'm the only one up here this session to pass a bill on illegal immigration in this state. I am the only one up here that has passed a bill about election integrity and ensuring that our military members have the right to vote in county elections. So I ask that you go to leereeves.com and support our candidacy, and I hope I have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Barrett, you're finally last.
Well, what your friends say about you says a lot, and I'm grateful to my friend Representative Bolso for saying something kind earlier about me being passionate and being willing to fight, even though it may mean political consequences for me. That is the way I approach this job as your representative. My role is to be your voice, to fight for you, to say what you would say if you were sitting in that chair. If you want someone that is not going up to D.C. to climb a ladder, that is not going up to D.C. to build an investment portfolio, that is not going to D.C. to get some political appointment, but is going to stand and fight and deliver for you every single day, I'm Jody Barrett, and I would ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for being here.
All right, once again from Cabaret, a big round of applause for the 4 gentlemen on the stage: Matt Van Epps, Lee Reeves, Gino Bolso, Jody Barrett. We thank you all for being here. We thank you for listening on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I deeply appreciate the partnership with Americans for Prosperity as they partnered with us in this debate. I hope it's been as informative on radio and online as it has been at Cabaret. So we're going to send it back to our studios on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm sure these gentlemen will be here to shake hands for the audience assembled. Safe travels home as you get out into this weather. We thank you, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Take care.